Connecting. All right, looks like everybody's starting to trickle in here, so we'll be able to get started in just a moment. Okay, thank you for joining us today. My name's Samantha Hooker, and I'll be the moderator for today's Eval Café. The Cafe is a longstanding speaker series that's hosted by the Evaluation Center at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The goal of the series is to encourage a deeper dive into all things evaluation. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge and honor the ancestral land of the Three Fires Confederacy, recognizing that WMU is located on lands historically occupied by the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Today, we're excited to be joined by Bagele Chilisa, Associate Professor at the University of Botswana, Nicky Bowman, President of Bowman Performance Consulting and Evaluator and Assistant Researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Michael Harnar, Assistant Professor at Western Michigan University. We do have a large audience that will be joining us today, so to ask a question, you may enter it into the Q&A section at any time during the presentation. You can also use the Zoom reaction button that will allow you to raise your hand. You can do that anytime during the presentation, and we'll address it when the host take question breaks. I'll also make sure you'll see that we have some people in person that we also give our in-person guests the chance to chime in as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Just FYI, we are still waiting for Bagele to join us. She's most likely in Botswana, and so I know that sometimes in fact, this is part of the process that we went through when we were developing this whole special issue of the journal. Is that we had meetings on our schedule, and sometimes she would not have power and wasn't able to join us. So it's just these kinds of moments in the process were sort of not the norm, but certainly part of the process that we had to undertake. So while I know Samantha introduced her and the two of us, just know that when she drops in, we'll bring her into the conversation. And if she doesn't, then you are stuck with just me and with Nicky today, talking about this, right, Nicky? So it's just the two of us. But thank you very much. I'll just quickly introduce myself. Samantha said I'm an assistant professor here at Western Michigan University. I'm also currently the co-executive editor of the Journal of MultiDisciplinary Evaluation. During the process of working with Bagele and Nicky, I was the sole executive editor of the journal. And then earlier this year, we've revamped our editorial board. We're in the middle of that. Many of you have seen the invitation to join our editorial board. So we took on a co-editor that is housed at the Evaluation Center. I'm a faculty on the faculty side at the university, and Lissa Becho Wilson has joined us from the Evaluation Center as a co-executive editor on the journal. So that's a little bit about myself and where I sit. Nicky, do you want to say hello and take over your opening remarks as well?
Sure. Kolomausi Nida Shinzi, Wichiwaniu, Kanewa, Kneon GIE, Shannon, Wisconsin, Walk Lenape Hoking. Good morning. My name is Nicky Bowman. I'm in Shannon, Wisconsin, United States, in the middle of the Great Lakes. We say the Great Lakes is the heart of Turtle Island. If you see me sort of looking this way, I'm just making sure Bagele isn't responding to an email that I sent, like, are you coming? Anywho, so I don't mean to be distracted. I'm just trying to be inclusive. It's so nice to see faces on here. As you saw, I'm up and stretching. So if you need to get up and stretch or grab a little snack, that'd be great. I would like to thank the Menominee Nation for the land that they gave to the Stockbridge Munsee, and that's the ancestral lands that I'm on. It would be cool if you'd put where your land is, who's original caretakers of the land that you're on, and now you're caretakers, so you're in our caretaking group, and just really excited to be here. I'd also like to thank Samantha and Michael, not for this journey, not just with the webinar, but with the journal, and Erica, if you can wave. She helps me to make sure that, because I put the known technology, that everything runs, and that I'm ready for these sessions. So thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm excited. I have my Christmas sparkles on, or holiday sparkles, and I hope that you're getting a little joy. It's rough, at the end of the year, trying to get everything in, reports and whatever else. So thank you for taking this time because we know you're busy.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I don't know that I had intended to be the master of ceremonies of this particular conversation, but I will sit in that place until Bagele joins us. So she was essentially, so this special issue, let me just kind of articulate how this special issue came about. I think, Nicky was nice enough to set up a few questions for us to address to keep our conversation on track. And one of the ones was, what was the impetus for the special issue? And I noticed that Ian Goldman is here from the International Evaluation Academy, and essentially him and Bob Picciotto before him in leading the International Evaluation Academy had some conversation with Chris Corrin, who was the executive editor before me, before we lost him in just over 2 years ago, and they had talked about building of a relationship between the journal and the academy. And one way to build that relationship for their perspective was to help the academy find a venue for the kind of work they're doing to help transform evaluation around the world. And one of the initiatives then would be to host a special issue of the Journal of MultiDisciplinary Evaluation that the academy would essentially lead, and we would serve as the venue for that. And so that was introduced to me essentially as I walked into the post as the executive editor of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation. Bob Picciotto reached out and said, hey, Chris and I had these conversations. We talked about this. This was part of our agreement that we would have this special issue. And I said, okay, let's do this special issue. How will we do that? And then they brought a team together to come to the table. There was a few people in the mix early on, and then really Bagele and Nicky took charge of the special issue. And I sort of sat as an executive editor. I was kind of a cat herder and a tech organizer and a guide to make sure the systems worked, manage the systems for them. And they went out and recruited authors, recruited submissions, we moved them through our copy editing process, back and forth between authors and copy editor, and then on to submission. So we published, if I remember correctly, it was July of this year. And so that was been from October of 2021, maybe November was maybe our first conversations, to July of 23. So we're talking about 18-month process to move a special issue from concept to publication date. It was a very popular publication. A lot of people, as you can see, in fact, Samantha tells me that this is our highest registered webinar of Eval Café this year so far. So we have a lot of interest. This has really generated a large, which is really what the International Evaluation Academy intended, was just to generate conversation, generate interest in the topic. And so when I shared something on LinkedIn, as of today, I have almost 4,000 impressions of the announcement of this issue, which was the biggest response of any post I put on LinkedIn in a few years. So it really has generated a lot of interest. So maybe, Nicky, I haven't seen Bagele yet, so why don't you talk about your participation and the development of it and how it came to you, and maybe set the stage for some more conversation.
I'd love to do that. I forgot to say Anishi Kishalamokoe Elamiliang Yon Kwai Kishkwik Nimu Bausawakanam Njosuk Winjin Nialagomatit Shlachikyan Anishik. I forgot at the start, we should be giving thanks for this day, for being awake and being together, and for all the good things in our life. I asked for forgiveness because I should have started that way, anyways. And I would encourage you, if any of you know how to say hello in your native language, whatever that is, say it. Let's have some beauty in our intersectional diversity that we have. I see that our IEAC president, Ian, is on. So Ian, if I misspeak, let me know. Truly, this, the way this, why now, the origin story. I came in a little bit after this sort of was conceptualized. So I trust that Ian and Michael, you know, and Bagele, if she's able to get on here, will be able to share a little bit more of that. But I can tell you that this is the first, I sort of have helped out with editorial stuff kind of in the background. But I would just like to say that Bagele has been somebody that I have, she's one of my sheroes. So I sort of had sticker shock, fangirl, whatever is the right word for it. It took me a minute to sort of get over the excitement and the giddiness of it. I know that Michael and Bagele were very patient with me, like, okay, how do you do this whole editorial thing? And of course, my first official one, being the Aries that I am, jumping right in, global north and south, you know, I couldn't pick a small journal. It's like big. But I sure learned a lot, and I appreciate that reciprocity and that investment, that human and time investment into the work that we are doing. I really love the topic of decolonization, because if you look at the types of authors, not only the geography of where, you know, the place that they come from, there's many stories of place in there. You will see different ages, you will see different race and ethnicities. I'm sure there's different orientation, and everybody's not 50 years and older with a PhD. And there's also diversity in the types of organizations that are represented, you know, from small businesses to Research One University. So it was pretty cool to see this issue come to be. We had a lot of different experiences, and I really think, and I would like the publishing world to hear this, and I would like those of you who are going to be editors not to be afraid to do it. It was embedded professional development for me, really, and a lot human development, because I sort of got to see how things worked. Most of the time things went pretty well. There were a few times that, you know, you get frustrated about different things, about the process or the amount of turnaround time, you know, all the things that we all normally sort of go through as if you do editing or if you do if you're you know, an author. But I think that overall, like, this was one of my greatest embedded learning experiences, and my hats off for the conceptualization from the International Evaluation Academy for sponsoring it, and then for JMDE for taking it up. I hope I'm saying that right. Michael, can we just say, or I don't know if Ian can come on, what the IEAC is? Do we have a minute to, because I'm new to the globe as well,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
I'm used to doing work in North America, so it was a real learning experience in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So Michael, I'm sorry, Bagele is just joining, so I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, super dupe. So yeah, that's actually what I was thinking as well, is we might give Ian like a minute or two or so to maybe just give us a quick high level on the academy, and then perhaps the thinking behind this, you know, and maybe a 2 to 3 minute philosophical kind of perspective on why decolonization of evaluation was the important topic that they wanted to lead off their first journal special issue on. Ian, are you able to unmute and join us for a moment or two?
Sure, thank you for that. Yes, so I mean, the academy was set up to look at the transformation of the contribution that evaluation can make to the transformation that we need to face the polycrisis that is now facing us. And the nature of that polycrisis is that it's causing fundamental questions about the way we relate to people, the way we relate to nature, and the way the current system exploits both and sucks up power and resources to a small proportion of the population. And so we need to be rethinking this paradigm. And in the academy, we talk about transformation. So it's set up to create a space where people can ask these very difficult questions about how we help to create a different world, and what evaluation can do to assist in that process. And potentially, we think it can be a very powerful contribution. And part of that is rethinking the values, the paradigms which underlie the way society operates. And we feel that decolonization of that view away from the current Western dominant model, which is based on exploitation, we can see the effect of that exploitation in the way inequality is so pervasive and in the way that nature is being destroyed, and we are creating a planet which is inhospitable to humanity. So we need a different way, and we think that we need to explore different perspectives, and that the indigenous perspective very particularly provides a holistic way of understanding both that relationship to people, the relation to nature, the perspective of the ancestors, and the perspective of the generations to come. And we need to take that type of perspective if we're going to heal our society and heal our planet. And therefore, we think this work is really key in moving to transform the world that we live in. Thanks.
Ian, thank you so much. That's really great grounding, and I appreciate you jumping in and giving us an impromptu on that. Unexpected calling you to the table. I'm so happy that Bagele has joined us. Bagele, we'd love to hear from you, and they would love to hear your voice. And maybe to set you up, you could introduce yourself a little bit about and where you are, whatever you'd like, and then maybe what we spoke a little about already is how this journal, and maybe you could talk about your role, how you came into being your editor, the lead editor on the special issue with Nicky and with me. How are you? Can't hear you yet. You're muted. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I'm happy to see you again after a long time. I'm Bagele. I was one of the editors of the JMDE, and it started with Bob. We're talking about, the Academy was talking about having a special issue published in AGE. And so I thought AGE stands for American Evaluation Journal. Is it AEG? Yeah, American Journal of Evaluation. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep, there you go.
And so then they said to me, no, it stands for African Journal of Evaluation. Then I said, but why would we want to have a special issue on decolonization in the African Journal of Evaluation? We in Africa know already about decolonization. Then Bob was quick to say, oh, yeah, you are right. Maybe us in Europe and the rest of the world need to hear that more. And so he said, but we can talk to JMDE, Journal of MultiDisciplinary Evaluation. And so, because maybe Bob had connections with JMDE, I do not know, but that's how we landed with the JMDE. And then came the whole topic of decolonization. The Academy had to debate whether it should be the issue. And fortunately, a lot of people felt that, yes, decolonization was an issue that needed to be debated. And then, of course, came the question of, so what exactly, how do we frame decolonization? and there was a lot of talk there. And I personally felt that they were talking about decolonization from a Western perspective. And so I came in, and I was very fortunate in that they didn't question very much how I framed it. They were very respectful and very inclusive and accommodative, and perhaps saying, well, this is the time to give the marginalized voices the space to frame this topic the way they think and feel. So with the help of those people that were there, people like Hussein and many others who were familiar with the topic, evaluators from the South. They helped a lot in terms of framing the topic. And I think Bob did a lot of work in terms of helping us to frame the storyline for the journal and the topics as you see them today. Thank you.
Wonderful, absolutely. Nicky and Bagele, I think maybe one of the questions that Nicky posed in her slide is a nice one to move on to next is, so how was the editorial and publication process with JMDE different from other experiences you've had publishing? I know that Nicky's been working with the Canadian Journal of Program Evaluation. Bagele, I know you've done a lot of writing and publishing and your own books and such. Maybe we can talk, from I think decolonizing, maybe I hope that you felt, and I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there was a sense that this process was a bit decolonized by itself, unto itself. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about your experience with the publication process and how it might have been different from your previous experiences.
Bagele, do you want to go first?
No, my dear, go first.
So that's part of the process right there. Elders first, capital E. It was different because I got to work with Kike Kwe Bagele, which means the woman warrior, a powerful woman. I think that the process was very much in lineage and kinship, which doesn't always happen. In terms of, I think Michael and Bagele knew that they knew I was a hard worker. I don't know why they picked me, but I'm glad they did. There was a kinship, and being a good relative, Walit Nialagomati, that way of how do we work together, and being able to, I think academia and publishing in particular can be very competitive and feel like a lonesome place. And I actually really looked forward to not only the professional, but the social emotional sort of support and thinking. There wasn't a question I ever felt like was crazy to ask. I always got very caring and thoughtful responses from both Bagele and Michael or the team, with the journal. I feel like we didn't ask. People were sort of conditioned by the academy, whether that's K-12 undergrad, grad, or the Volpe, or the machine that makes it run. People were sort of freaked out. I don't know if freaked out was right, but conditioned to say, well, what's the word count? And when we said there is none, it was almost unsettling. They're like, really? So not having that was decolonized, the word count, the way if we needed more time, because Bagele and I both have caretaking responsibilities outside of ourselves. So if things would come up, that process went very well. If we said we needed more time, and Michael too, we all were very accepting of each other's schedules, and worked on things asynchronously if we needed to, and adjusted. Every meeting we adjusted if we needed to. Everything wasn't set in stone, so it was very in that way it was very there was a structure, a guide, but it was organic, and we kind of took it week by week to see where things were at, and when we had to pivot, we pivoted. We also had, and forgive me, I don't remember who sponsored it, but we had someone help sponsor. So some of our authors could have APA editing that was sponsored by JMDE. And I don't know if IEAC, if Ian's shop paid for it. Yes, thank you to the International Evaluation Academy. So that doesn't always happen because a lot of times people, new authors, we were looking for new authors or authors who hadn't published a lot. We wanted to give them caring support. Bagele and I offered to meet with them one-on-one if they needed that, and we quite often did that, which also usually doesn't happen, to sort of help talk through. A lot of times you can just have a human touch and talk through some things. That really helps. And then also saying, get your thoughts out there. And, you know, most everyone is a good writer, but I can write in past, present, and future tense all in one long sentence that could be a half a page long. So I need APA help and editorial help myself. So that was offered. What else? Oh, a decolonized author agreement. And Michael, perhaps you can speak to that later, but being able to have the intellectual and cultural property rights of your own work is important. And for those of us who write and use culture and language and cultural concepts that you were given from your community or your elders or wherever that is, with permission to use externally, that's really important, that you don't sign away your worldwide exclusive rights to said publisher. And so that was really cool, really like that. Those are a few of the things that made it decolonized for me. And free access, of course. Free access is a very decolonized thing. And those are really, so you're, you know, from a policy to an access to a kinship, professionalization that includes kinship. Those are all ways that was, you could say, decolonized or very indigenous to me, and felt like a good place to be, and made me happy about showing up and learning. Like, lucky me that I got to be part of this process. And there was also a promise that I will pass it along to others, what I've learned.
Bagele, any thoughts to add to that?
Oh, I think Nicky has said a lot about how we, the process and the structures in place. I want to maybe talk more about the process of decolonizing the mind. Like, even though we are scholars from, we are indigenous scholars talking about decolonizing evaluation, it's hard for us because sometimes we are angry at what has happened and what is happening, and sometimes we want to exclude those who we feel took are participating in the colonization of evaluation. So it was a process that we debated and talked about. How do we get in scholars who are not indigenous? How do we get, should we get them to publish? And if they publish, should we invite them to send articles to this special issue, or should it be exclusive and be invite only scholars from invite only indigenous scholars? So we debated that, and we felt that we're also going through the process of how best to decolonize evaluation, and we agreed that we need allies, we need non-indigenous scholars to participate in the whole process of decolonization. And we debated on whether when we do, they can publish on their own. I mean, they could have single authored articles, or it should be joined with an indigenous scholar. That was a debate that we had, and it was an interesting debate. And we we debated it, and some of us felt that we have learned the Western ways, and we are expected to publish soul. We can publish. We are expected to know the Western ways of doing things as if we were born in the culture. So we expect non-indigenous scholars also to learn indigenous evaluation methodologies. We expect them to learn thoroughly the decolonization process and the strategies and the debate, just as we learned, and we are awarded qualifications on the basis of a knowledge that is not our own, but we are expected to know it 100%. So we ended up saying, okay, non-indigenous scholars could submit articles single authored, and appreciating the fact that there is not enough literature perhaps, but all the same, there should be a beginning. So Western scholars, indigenous, non-indigenous scholars, they have to recognize that this debate about decolonization and the whole thing about decolonization and decolonizing evaluation paradigm, it's not a topic for indigenous scholars only. It is a global debate that we are expecting all scholars to debate it and to take it seriously and make it part of the discourse in evaluation in the curriculum in universities. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Nikki, one of the questions came up in the chat about the traditional copyright agreements and why they're problematic, and maybe the changes you and others were advocating for in the academic publishing world.
Sure. Bagele, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We talked a lot about positionality and first voice. Look that up. I'm a Native woman, but I'm not first voice in the Ho-Chunk community. So it was really important to have that. And I agree with the way that we put it forward, that we need, that's why there's red, white, yellow, black in our medicine wheel. We need allies and we need partners as we're doing this work, because decolonization is something that spans, that should be part of just our natural discussion every day, regardless of, who you are, where you come from. And to that sort of to segue into the question, Michael, part of my decolonization process for my next, I'm 52, so I hope for my next 50 years, if I get to live that long, I want to make things that last for 7 generations beyond me, so that Native scholars indigenous scholars coming up don't have this, or any scholars really, but I'm doing it as an active land acknowledgement and upholding our sovereign rights as rights holders. We're not stakeholders, we're rights holders, as Larry Bremner says. He's past president of the Canadian Eval Society, another elder I respect very much, Métis elder. And so before I say yes to any writing project, I say, show me the author agreement. And if the author agreement says that the publisher for the journal gets worldwide exclusive rights and can use it whenever they want, I've walked away from a lot of projects, where book chapters and books and things like that, because we couldn't get the publisher to change their ways. As Santana says, you got to change your evil ways, baby. Okay. So, if you're a publisher or an organization that's sitting on stolen land, part of the truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to transform and decolonize, is to give the rights back to the people who are your free labor. Otherwise, it's the same colonizing, settler state, whatever word you want to use, behavior. You're extracting information from us and calling it your own, and you're selling it for your profit. Okay, that's the same thing that happens with when you extract diamonds from a landmine, oil from the ground, trees. it's the same colonizing behavior. Okay, and so it became clearer to me the older I got that I will not be part of the a cog in the colonizer's wheel. I'm just little Nicky Bowman, and you know, I don't know why, but I got a few people to agree to some of these decolonization publication agreements. So besides JMDE doing a wonderful job, I would like to shout out to University of Toronto Press, who is part of the Canadian Journal of Program Evaluation, also free access. And then I would like to say that Oxford University Press is the latest on the list that is doing that. And I remember having lots of discussions with a bunch of the editorial teams, and even they must have like editorial lawyers or something. And I just showed up with my bundle and my knowledge and my spirit. And at one point I went, Indigenous people don't need Oxford. Oxford needs Indigenous people. And I don't know, it just jumped right out of my mouth. And I thought, well, what the hell? Sometimes the ancestors just boom. And you know, those of you who know me know I'm passionate. I'm a critical pragmatist. I'm passionate, but I will work very hard. And I also work to bring the people together. I just assume people don't know. And so it was a good educational journey that we've been on so far, that both the Oxford attorneys and their different layers of editors have. And I said, if you want people to enjoy what you're putting out there, you have to give some of this power back, and you have to let us write the way we write, and you have to let us own the things that we have. And so it's been probably a 1.5-year discussion, and we're still working on things, with an annotated Indigenous bibliography is the end work product that'll come out sometime later in 2024. But that was part of the process. So if it's not there, I just try to negotiate it in. And I'm hoping I can get 10 before, maybe if I get 10, then I can retire or semi-retire. But that's sort of my latest journey. And now with being a section editor for culture and ethics for the American Journal of Evaluation, you know who's next on the list that I'm going to be working towards getting this. So anyways, hopefully that answered the question a bit.
Okay. Great. Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would say a little bit about my role in the process of decolonization and how it played itself out as the executive editor at the time of moving this issue through. I think fortunate for me and for the process and for this issue, I was brand new to the role of executive editor and had to make decisions that in some ways I didn't know what the right decision was. So I knew that there were probably lots of structures in place that I could turn to and look for copyright lawyers and look for how the system might expect me to make some decisions. But I also knew that we were trying to do something that respected the grounds from which it rose. And so there were moments where some of the for instance, artwork that was being brought into some of the articles didn't have necessarily exact ownership. They had a historical placement in the community, but didn't have a specific ownership. Where was this first published, which is really how you go in copyright. Well, to look for first publication. And that particular kind of mindset of well, how far back do I have to go to find out where the first time somebody wrote this or etched it on a stone to say who came up with it? That process felt very colonizing. And I decided and to just step away from that process and look toward the process with which it came to the table and where it sat in the ownership of the community that called it its own content, and left the ownership in that space and made those choices. One, because I was in a position of power, I decided to not take that power, not own that power, but to give that power over to those authors who had brought that work to the table. So in some ways that I was in the space of acting through enacting decolonization in my role as executive editor, which was interesting. It really learned a lot through the process and felt really good to be able to be in, I'm an old white guy sitting in this role as executive editor. There's a lot of power in that in so many different ways. And it was really gratifying to not own that. Well, own it and give it away. So I wanted to mention that. There is a question in the box, but I also want to make sure. So one of the pieces that we have about 15 minutes left, we want to leave it open for a little bit of conversation. There was one question, Nikki, you broached this question in our conversation leading up to this webinar about courageous conversations. I think that one that I just articulated was a bit of a courageous conversation that I was having with some of the authors and my copy editor, who was saying you should be doing this, and I had to be courageous in that moment to say, well, you know what, we're just not going to do that. But Nikki, Bagele, do you have any moments, particular courageous conversations that come to mind for you that might help our audience experience a little bit about what you experience? Nikki's waiting for you, Bagele, because of our respect for others. So.
Okay. Well, for me, there were moments of joy. My moments of joy came in when I could clarify some of the discourses in indigenous, decolonizing evaluation. I had read Nicky's work and I had cited her, but I had not seen the girl face to face. Just talking to her and having those debates, and the moments of realization when she said to me, but these topics on relational knowing, relational epistemology, relational ontology, they just sound the same as what we have in my own communities. And that gave me a lot of joy, because all this time, my thinking has been that there are some commonalities about an indigenous evaluation paradigm. There are some things that we can draw across communities in Africa, communities in indigenous communities in New Zealand, First Nation, in Canada, in the US. So for me, that was a moment of joy. And I look forward to working with Nicky and other indigenous scholars in really looking at these commonalities and making a powerful pitch for a paradigm that is driven by social theory on colonization and the marginalized voices that we have not heard, and whose worldviews are not part of the discourse or are beginning to be part of the discourse, but we do not have enough drive from the indigenous scholars to draw together that which is common across communities. Thank you.
Nikki, do you want to add anything to that around courageous conversations or takeaways?
Well, it's when you're debating with one of your sheroes, that's hard. So a lot of times I would have my moccasins on. It's not hard I don't know if courageous is the right word. I mean, it took some courage, but it was just being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and knowing that you bring me joy too, Bagele. I mean, Michael, you as well. This is was a great process and still continues to be as we reflect, and sort of get the word out. But just talking about how do we uphold sovereignty and not just the traditional knowledge or those components. I mean, that was one thing that we talked about, and it takes it, I knew that I was a new person coming to this, not only to the journal and to editing, but, to IEAC. And so, it takes courage to sort of get out there and get in the global context, but I really hope that, from what you're hearing from all of us on here, that I'm thankful for the relationship between Western Michigan University, in the Eval Café and IEAC, because I think it sort of shows you, like what Bagele was saying, that this topic of decolonization or this way to think about relational thinking or epistemologies, there are a lot more people outside of the United States that actually vibe with the work, that you're doing. And we're a lot more connected than what the media, social media, or whatever else likes to show. And I think when you show up in an authentic way, knowing that, we're committed to this bigger movement of decolonization in publication in the field, a lot of unimportant things really fall away. And you can't learn if you don't show up authentically. You have to have cultural and academic humility when you do this work. You have to have courage to say, well, I don't know, I'm new to this, but can somebody help me? And a friend will put their hand out. The friends here that I have, put their hands out to be helpful. So we'll see how it goes when they start asking me to travel. I like to stay. I'm nervous about that. That'll take some courage, but that's for another webinar.
Yep. The one question that we have at the tail end of our set is this question of what would you like other editors and authors to take away from the experience that you had with publishing this special issue? Bagele, anything you want to send out there to authors and or editors of journals or editors of books? I know Nicky spoke a little bit about that, but anything to offer to the future authors and editors?
I can maybe say to future editors or special issues, special issues, a special issue is a special issue. Or all I can say is that they be courageous and put forward suggestions or topics or explore new topics in ways that perhaps bring to the table, to the discourse, marginalized voices. There's a lot that is not being talked about. And the practitioners, they have a lot that they can bring to the table in terms of new areas that we need to talk about, write about, discuss. Like for me, my most interesting topic was of course, I was one of the authors, but I was not the first author. Let's decolonize evaluation, the mural article where we were challenging publishers to go beyond the traditional ways of publishing articles and to include a space where practitioners and people that are involved in the field can actually also get their voices heard through murals. So that was courageous, and I really thank our editor also, Michael Harnar, because he didn't think he welcomed the whole idea. So clearly, there are things that we need to say that are not mainstream. We should not be scared to voice them out. We should not be scared as editors to delve in some of those things that at first thought it may feel like this is not academic, this is not really knowledge, because that is what will bring about some transformation in the way we do evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki, you want to throw anything else out there?
Just for the non-indigenous or non-BIPOC, just really asking you, I mean, Michael said he was in a position, Michael has some level of self-awareness and moved beyond that to work on things I'm sure that Bagele and I didn't even realize or see. And I think that the courageous conversations part of this, or how do we develop the non-indigenous to, whether you're going, I'm curious about decolonization, but I'm worried. You know, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. You know, if I act nervous about it, is that going to be read as white fragility? You know, how do I show up without sucking the life out of the bone, you know, out of the bodies of, you know, the people that you're trying to help? How do I build capacity and skills and experience around that? I would just really say, I want you to look and listen to the non-BIPOC allies who are doing this work in a good way and who keep showing up and earning that trust and respect. And that's that reciprocity and that good relationship. When I talked about Walit Nialagomatit, Walit Wichapiko, that's that good medicine flow. It is relational. And that's how we unlearn, learn, and relearn together. And so I really think that if you look at the literature, those are in the decolonization or diversity, equity, inclusion, or cultural responsiveness, that's what's missing, is how do the Ian Goldmans, the Michael Harnars, you know, Michael Quinn Patton, Andre Lisa Belzer, I could go on and on, Kate McKegg, how do our Debbie Delancey, our non-indigenous brothers and sisters, is what I would say, how are they doing that work and how did they get there? And, you know, I look at the, there's a, thank you, whoever shared, Lisa, the white supremacy culture. How do you interrupt that? How do we interrupt that? I would also say, if you're curious about decolonization, we know everybody doesn't come in. It's sort of on a developmental scale in my mind. I look at Milton Bennett's intercultural sensitivity scale. Someday I'm going to rewrite that for, I'm an evaluator. What does this look like as I'm going from white supremacist to white abolitionist? Those are his words on the ends of his continuums. I'm not saying anyone's white supremacist, at least in this group here that I'm working with, or you would be heckling us already. But in all seriousness, working, that's what I would say. One of the takeaways is how do you work on yourself? And we talk about the 7 directions: the Eastern, the Southern, the Western, the Northern, the earthward, the skyward, and the inward. That's another teaching. But anyways, the shortest journey inward, it's right, the shortest physical journey, but it's sometimes the longest journey because it's ongoing. And it's also hard to sort of go, ooh, how did I benefit? What's my origin story, my ancestors' origin story? How do I continue to benefit with my privilege or my fill in the blank? You know, really having that self-awareness and then working on yourself, and then finding a group of people, a small group that you can sort of, you know, hold hands and work on this together. And it's been nice to be able to do that with the JMDE folks. So Walit, big thanks. Good job.
Thanks to Nikki. I know that we're about, oh, it just turned over to 1 o'clock, so we're at the top of our hour. And there are last minutes before, oh, right. So sorry, I was catching the chat. Thank you both, Bagele and Nikki, for joining us. Thank you for the audience. You all were wonderful to be here. It was a really, some of these questions were really valuable that came in the chat, it kept us going. I want to just mention that we do have another special issue coming out within the next couple of weeks at JMDE, which is on evaluation competencies, but from a Global South perspective. Sanjeev Sridharan, formerly of the Gates Foundation and now with University of Hawaii, is special issue editor with his team, April and Rachel, and they are putting together about 10 articles, 11 articles focused on competencies from a different perspective than the Global North. So that's what I'm really excited about that one. I don't know that Samantha's still here that needs to close us out, but I think I can probably do that for us. Thank you everybody for joining us, and check in at to our Eval Cafe listing to make sure you register and come see us next year for many of our Wednesday chats. Thank you so much, everyone.